Okay, so hello everyone. Today we have the wonderful Ren Hutchings here, who is the author of the soon to be released in the US, already released in the UK, Under Fortunate Stars. So thank you so much for coming on my channel. Would you please introduce yourself and your book?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Ren. I am the author of Under Fortunate Stars. It is a space opera which has accidental time travel and a history nerd to the rescue, and it's about the perils of meeting your heroes. So it is told in 4 points of view. 2 of them are in the past timeline where we visit in flashbacks. 2 of them are in the present day timeline. And one of those present day points of view is the history nerd that I was just talking about. Her name is Uma Ozaka. She's an engineer on a science ship, and she loves history. She knows a lot of things about history. She's been passionate about it her whole life, and she collects memorabilia and documentaries and all this kind of obscure knowledge. And the one thing that she never expected was to get to meet some of her historical heroes in person. But that is exactly what happens to her. Her ship encounters a time anomaly. While they're in there, they meet another ship, and it very quickly becomes apparent that some of the people on that ship are people who were historically important to Uma's timeline, but some crucial details about them seem to be very different than how history remembered.
Oh.
And some of the people have made very different choices. They seem to not be on the mission that they're supposed to be on. And this potentially could have consequences for Uma's timeline because, you know, if they didn't do the mission that they were supposed to do, which ended an interstellar war, her future wouldn't be there the way that it is. So she has to use some of that historical knowledge she has to start to unravel, you know, how this happened, why these differences are there. And that's where we pick up the story.
Ooh, I love that. Oh, the stakes are very high there. Ooh, yeah. I love that historian meets sci-fi technology thing you have. Oh, that's so cool. It's exciting.
Thank you.
So what were your inspirations for the story?
I think that I've been a sci-fi fan basically all of my life as I started to become a reader and started to consume media. Like sci-fi has always really been my thing. And so a kind of lifetime of watching, reading sci-fi and engaging with the fandom, I think it has become a sort of tapestry of all of the things that I've really, really loved about sci-fi. So if there's a first contact story, there is a rogue crew of misfits, there's like the futuristic interstellar corporation, there's a generational war, there's a whole lot of different tropes and themes that I have absorbed from various places. But I think that the bones of my fandom and my origins as a sci-fi writer is always going to be Star Trek. So there's a lot of that in there, I think, particularly in the group cast dynamic. That's one of the things that I really, really love about Star Trek is the way that different personalities and different characters with different backgrounds come together to solve problems, and that's very much in there. And I think that it's a love letter to Star Trek and to all the things that I love about it. Another big inspiration is the show Lost, particularly in the structure of the novel. So ever since I first saw Lost, I was like, I really want to one day write a story that feels the way that show feels in structure. So you have this kind of high stakes story that's also very character driven, that's happening in the present, but there's also a story being told in parallel in flashbacks that echoes into it. So they're kind of these 2 stories that are in conversation with one another, and you're kind of seeing a flashback that tells you information that explains something that's about to happen. And just like the way that that was so beautifully balanced, is definitely a huge influence on how this book is structured, because that's how, there's flashback chapters interspersed that tell you things that echo into the main timeline.
Oh, wow.
I
That sounds
think I think a lot of people have mentioned the Firefly vibes as well, which I think you
Ooh.
probably feel that the most in the past timeline, because we visit some like less lawful parts of the galaxy, and we see like a little bit of the the sort of underworld of certain planets. And also you have the sort of rogue misfit crew who come together, sometimes under like a little bit of strange circumstances, but end up becoming this found family who really have each other's back. So there's
Oh,
that too.
yes. I love Firefly. So that's really exciting. And I do love Star Trek too. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. So that's really exciting. But that non-linear storytelling must have been kind of, it sounds a little difficult to write and like keep organized in your brain.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you mind telling me a little bit about your writing process in general and like how you draft?
I draft chaotically and completely out of order. Um, which maybe suits nonlinear storytelling because I draft very nonlinearly as well. But that's not to say that the order I drafted in is the way that is stated, because I think one of the most difficult parts about editing this book was finding that order, like where to place certain flashbacks and the order to reveal things to the reader to make it feel really satisfying and to make sure you always have, the information that you need to know, but also to balance the emotional arcs, because a lot of times you're seeing something about a character in the present and you need to know something about their past to really make that land. When I start drafting, I always know the inciting incident of the story and I know the ending, and everything else I pretty much write as it comes to me.
Oh
And
my gosh.
fill in the blanks. The very first scene I ever wrote for this book is still in there, and it is very close to how I wrote it when I first wrote it. It's the scene where the galleon, Uma's science ship, first plays back the distress call that they got from the ship from the past, and they play it for the crew. And you kind of get everyone's reactions to the idea that they seem to be experiencing some kind of time phenomenon. And that really is the moment that the two timelines collide, when the two ships are in the same place. You kind of find out that, that's really the story that you get told even on the back of the book, what happens. But that scene has really not changed from the first moment that I wrote it. The characters have developed a lot since then, but I always knew, there's this moment and then there's the ending, and then some things happen that connect those two things somehow. So I write the scenes in the order that I come up with them. Then I go through a process, usually with a lot of cue cards on the floor, probably
gosh.
cursing or crying, and trying to figure out how it all fits together until I have a sort of tentative order. And then I go back and I redraft from the beginning, starting to fill in some of the gaps of whatever I didn't write the first time.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I recommend this process. Like, this is not an instruction manual.
No, that's amazing, honestly.
That meme was like, I don't know what outlining is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. That
Yeah. Yeah, I guess outlining is helpful, but it can also sometimes hinder like creativity and stuff. So yeah.
I do reverse outline. I think that that's really helpful for my process. If you're someone who drafts out of order, or you don't necessarily follow a beat sheet or anything like that, but then you can do that in reverse afterwards and just slot the material that you have into a reverse outline to kind of get a picture of it and see like where you have too much or too little action or where something's missing. So you can do those steps still, just later.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Reverse outline. Interesting. I have to look into that for my own story. So I'm really interested in some of your favorite books and authors. So
my favorite books and authors.
Yeah.
So I think I grew up reading tons of sci-fi classics, just whatever my library had on the shelves, which was like a lot of older books. But I think that I came to modern space opera through Alistair Reynolds. I think he is still a huge favorite.
Yes.
Especially my favorite book is Chasm City. And even though it's part of a series, but it's also standalone, even though it's kind of in the middle chronologically. So if you ever want to jump into the Revelation Space universe, Chasm City is really nicely standalone, even within the series. And I think that from those books, I really got a lot of my inspiration for how to layer things, right? Where you have things happening at different parts of the world. Like you have this big galactic stakes going on, but then you also have smaller stories that take place inside of that, and they kind of sit inside each other like cogs. And I think that he does that really wonderfully. And also just for world building, his world building is amazing. I also love Becky Chambers. I think that Becky Chambers, I would say, was a really big influence on this book in revisions, because I had not read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet yet when I drafted it. Actually, one of my critique partners recommended it as like a potential comp title when I was revising. And so I came to read it then, and I loved it. No surprise. But I think that what it really encouraged me to do is to give the character stories all the time that they needed on the page. Even though all this enormous stuff is going on, character stories are still what always interests me in sci-fi. You know, there can be all the plot in the world. You have to care about someone. You have to care about the person telling the story, the person that's in peril, the person that's having problems. And you've got to care as much about their small personal world as you do about the big galactic stakes, because you're seeing it through their eyes. And I think that in revisions, I really, really leaned in to some of the emotional arcs a lot more because of having read Becky Chambers' work.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she is a master at character arcs and stuff. Yeah.
I love also Aliette de Bedard wrote one of my favorite books. It's called In the Vanisher's Palace. And it's a combination of mythological elements with sci-fi in a way that's just like so interesting. Again, world building, just brilliant world building, but also a really interesting character story. Like that story has a very cool romance in it. But also just bringing in different like fairy tale and mythological elements and layering that in. Again, like building a story that has multiple layers of meaning. Beautiful.
Interesting. Yeah, that's definitely on my TBR. I've read Fireheart Tiger by her, but I have not read Vanisher's Palace yet. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And okay, interesting. Thank you. So yeah, I'm a big fan of character-driven stories, so that's making me really excited. I have the arc of your book, but I have not gotten the chance to read it yet, so I'm really excited too, because I love character-driven sci-fi. So you mentioned that your CP kind of helped influence your writing and had some good suggestions. So do you have any advice for like burgeoning sci-fi writers who are trying to write their first story or get published?
I think that there's just a wealth of information online. There's so much advice, both good and bad. Even talking about stuff like outlining, like it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. There's very little advice that's one size fits all. I think everyone has their own creative process, so it can be really difficult to say, well, this, you can share what worked for you, but if your writing process is different, it might not work for you. But the one thing that works for everybody is find your community. Find people who are at a similar place in their journey to you. Writing and navigating the publishing landscape can be really lonely. It can be confusing, especially if you are new to it and you don't, just finding other people that are doing the same steps you are is so invaluable, because it makes the parts that are hard easier. It gives you a community. It gives you new perspectives. I actually just wrote a blog post about this recently with two of my critique partners. We met when we were querying in 2018, and then all of our books came out like in the last year. So we did a collective sort of interviewing each other about the process and like what it was like getting to know each other, and especially what we learned from each other. So find your people 100%. Just you can find people online if you don't have critique partners. There's a lot of Twitter events and just various forums, places where you can reach out to other writers who write in your genre and who write similar things to you. And also just write what you love. That I think you cannot, when a writer really loves the thing that they write, I think that it shines through. Your writing is so much stronger when you write what you'd love to read. And if you'd love to read it, there's someone else out there who also wants that story. So I think those two things, find your writing community, reach out to your friends and fellow writers, critiquing other people's work also really helps you like to think about editing in a different way, like what works, what doesn't, and having to articulate that, like, why didn't this character arc quite land? Like actually having to think about how to explain that to someone else helps you see the same things in your own work in a different way. And yeah, and write what you love.
Ooh, yeah, that's a really good point. Like editing others' works kind of helps you.
Yeah, it absolutely helps you.
Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Thank you. Well, I'd love to read that blog post. I'll have a link to it down below so everyone can read it. So speaking of other people's books, what are some book releases that you're looking forward to this year?
Oh my goodness, so many. There's so many. Like I feel like I've answered this question a few times, and each time I try to like say different ones because there's actually so many that I don't run out.
There are so many.
There is a new, so I love Alex White's trilogy, The Salvagers, which is the book that starts with a big ship at the edge of the universe. There's 3 of them. That one's complete.
I've heard of that.
But they actually have a new trilogy that's starting. And the first book is coming out this summer. I actually have an arc, which I am very excited to start reading shortly. I mean, it's called August Kitco and the Megas from Space, which is like the most incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so very excited for their new one and for the fact that it's the first in another new trilogy, which is my next 3 years of TBR. I am excited about The Stars Undying by Emery Robin, which is another debut. This book sounds amazing. It is a retelling, a reimagining of the story of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar in a space opera setting. It has comps. It has comps to Ancillary Justice and A Memory Called Empire, which are 2 amazing books. Like just
yes,
it sounds mind-blowing. The cover was just revealed. It also looks gorgeous. I am very excited about this. And it's another debut book, which is also very cool. I was excited to see like what new voices are coming into SFF. Definitely. And what else? I'm going to say I want to do a nonfiction one because I also love space science, and I love you know, occasionally, probably at least once a month, I try to check out a nonfiction book, usually in the space science section. There's a new book coming out in August. It is called The Milky Way, an autobiography of our galaxy by Moya McTeer. And she is a folklorist who's also an astrophysicist, which, like, if that isn't the most amazing combination of interest. I'm so excited about this book. I follow her on Twitter. She has a very cool website also, which we can link to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Down below. Yeah, so I have pre-ordered that book and I am really looking forward to it.
Ooh, that sounds awesome. Do you find like reading space nonfiction or like watching space documentaries kind of helps you write sci-fi at all?
I don't know. Like, I mean, it's influential, but I think like my books are definitely not hard sci-fi. It is squishy. It's soft and squishy. There is some science in it, but it is not the focus, right? So I think a lot of times the characters as well are not you know, people that would know the fine details of how things work, because they're often not scientifically you know, people with scientific jobs or that are and so a lot of the explanations of the science in the book are told from the perspective of someone who's not a scientist, which I think is actually
because we're not scientists.
I think that helps a lot to sort of, you know, I've always prioritized the story over, you know, any kind of scientific accuracy. And another problem that comes up is that things change so quickly that sometimes you know, you say something about an exoplanet or something, and by the time the book comes out, it's actually not correct anymore. And I said, well, the book managed to come out and we haven't made an alien first contact yet. So my book, at least that didn't happen. There was a couple of months ago, there was some kind of like, a space signal again. I'm like, no, not now, because
oh god, we have enough going on.
There's way too much going on. Yeah, but do I think that it influences me? Yes, because I think that watching documentaries or reading things about the enormity of the universe, the enormity of possibility. If anything, it's the fact of what's unknown that influences my writing, because I think there's just so much, like for as much as we've made so many technological advances and we've learned so much about the universe, there's still so much we don't know at all. There's stuff that's spooky and weird and that we don't know if it's possible, and we don't really know what's out there. And the kind of enormity of what could be there is just really magical place to write fiction.
Yeah,
Space.
that's why I love sci-fi so much.
Space could be anything.
Yes.
And also because the laws of physics may not even be the same in different parts. Like part of my book takes place in this kind of anomalous rift between timelines. And so how does physics work in there? We don't know. We never been in a rift between timelines before. So in a way, it's like very freeing, because you can kind of let the story lead what it needs, but also speculate in really cool ways about what might be possible. I have one critique partner who is a former physicist, and he does like rein me in if I do something too out there, like, oh, I don't think this would quite work this way. So I think that everything in the book is hypothetically possible, but it's not really scientifically explained.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. And that's very useful, having a physicist critique partner. Wow. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have 2 more questions left. They're kind of fun questions.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you have a book playlist for Under Fortunate Stars.
Yes. Yeah. I have several. I have playlists for each of the characters, and then I have like a kind of overall one. There's one, actually, we'll link to it down below, which my publisher just put one up. So you can probably find it on my website or on my social media, but we'll also link to it. And there is a piece of original music that goes with the book, which is super exciting. It is a collaboration that I did with a friend of mine who is a folk rock musician, and his band, The Burning Hell. And what we did, we recorded a folk song that is mentioned in the book. So it's a folk song that tells the historic exploits of these legendary heroes who stopped the war. And it tells it from the perspective of, many years down the road when they've become sort of heroes of folklore. And it tells this very exaggerated, heroic version of events as it would have been told in pop culture in Uma's time. And we recorded this song for real. And you can find it on most of your favorite music streaming services, or we can also link to a page where there's a landing page. It's on YouTube as well, I think. And so you can search for it. It's called The Flight of the Jonah by The Burning Hell. So you can search for either of those 2 things on your favorite platform. You can check it out. There are no spoilers for the book, because it is telling you the heroic version of events as you basically find out right at the beginning. So you can listen to that.
Wow, that is so cool. I love when like things from books are made into reality. That is so cool. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, I'll definitely link that and your book playlist down below. I'm looking forward to listening to that. And I promised we'd get to Star Trek.
Oh, Star Trek.
So for the last question, oh my God, I love that. That's so cool. So who's your favorite Star Trek character?
I think the fact that I have a different answer to this like every day of the week is exactly why I love Star Trek as much as I do. Like, I think that each of the characters have different episodes and different times when they shine. The real magic of it, though, is the way that they work together. So my favorite captain is Picard, always has been, always will be. I'm really very excited that there's a new show that, we get to kind of see what happened to him. And particularly from a character exploration point of view, because TNG was fairly episodic, you didn't always get time to delve into those sort of deeper character stories that would take multiple episodes to go into. And now we're getting to find out, some more interesting, sometimes slightly darker elements of his past, and also look at the events that happened in a new light, knowing what we know now about his past and about, how he became the person that he is.
Yeah.
And I love it. And the fact that we're getting all of the TNG crew back in season 3 is like, I saw that trailer and I saw the trailer, and it's mainly just like, it's just Patrick Stewart and then voiceovers of like all the other characters talking, and then you see all their names. Like it's almost basically the whole big 7.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
I got goosebumps. I was like, okay, wow, like,
oh wow.
Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, I love it.
But I think that what's been true across all of the series, though, is that there's just so many wonderful characters, and you could write an essay about why like 6 different characters are your favorite. And I think that the fact that the one thing that they always do so well is bringing characters together that have both complementary qualities and very opposing qualities, and seeing how those personalities interact and how they both create problems and solve problems together. That's the magic of it. I love all of them, and I refuse to choose a favorite.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I love all Star Treks. So yeah, I still have to watch season 2 of Picard. And I'm
halfway into it. We're kind of rationing it out because I'm like, it's going to be over. So we're just like watching, because now I know it was coming out once a week, and it was right in the middle of when all of my book stuff was happening. So I wasn't watching a ton of shows. I'm like super behind on so many shows. Like my list of things to watch is just getting longer all the time. But this, like, I was super looking forward to this one. So like, I want to wait and kind of save it until I have time to really, really enjoy it. And yeah, we're about, I think, 4 episodes in. So I'm excited to get into that and to unblock all the tags that I've blocked to avoid seeing spoilers.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I've been avoiding them. Like, oh gosh. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me here for this interview. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited.
I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited. So I know your release dates have changed a little bit. Do you mind telling everyone?
Yeah, okay. So the ebook and the audiobook are available right now everywhere on all your favorite platforms. You can go and get them immediately right now. In the UK, in the hardback is out. It is in stores. I have not held a copy in my hands yet, but I've seen photographic evidence that it is in the stores. My friends went to the stores and took a picture in the bookshop. It was adorable. I'm still waiting to hold a copy, but it is there. And then in the US, it should be on shelves by June 7th. So we had a little bit of supply chain issues, as has been the case for so many books. So it's just a couple of extra weeks of delay, but by June 7th, if you can still pre-order now, and hopefully you will have it in your hands very soon. And so will I. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, everyone go out and buy the book, pre-order the book. I'm very excited for it. Thank you so much. And yeah, so I'll have everything we talked about linked down below. I'll have REN HUTCHINGS author website linked as well. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.